we often say, I've heard before said that people are dying more from what's eating them. That is, with their thoughts, their ideas, their beliefs, their traumas, than what they're eating. People are expiring because of their rumination, their experiences that they don't have a chance to talk about, and these things cause them to not have clear, calm presence. And you talk about the issue of how to feel clearer, how to be calmer, and how to have more control.
Welcome to Profound Conversations, a dynamic broadcast platform focused on building healthy communities. In an ever-evolving world, new ideas and transformative ways of being are the lights at the end of the tunnel.
This is Profound Conversations, and I am Dr. Mawata Kairi Sankara, also known as Kevin Washington. And this is a moment for us to talk about something that we often will overlook: the connection between the mind, body, and soul and our spirit. The connection between how we feel and how we think and how we live. The connection between things that actually disrupt our flow in life: trauma, anger, despair, and how those things can negatively cause us to have more anguish and more health problems than we need to have. Dana Gant, an RN with over 30 years of experience in the healthcare industry, has conceptualized something that I think is so wonderful. That is this idea of sacred flow, and how she talks about guided movement and conscious breathing and being mindful, have a mindful presence, and how to quiet the mind, and how to understand how in this quietness there is a settling of the nervous system that facilitates healing, health, and holism. Welcome to Profound Conversations, Dana Gant, RN. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here this afternoon, and to say that I feel honored.
I am honored to be in your presence, because this is where we need to be. We need to have these conversations about health, healing, holism, the idea of internal flow. And we often say, I've heard before said, that people are dying more from what's eating them. That is, with their thoughts, their ideas, their beliefs, their traumas, than what they're eating. People are expiring because of their rumination, their experiences that they don't have a chance to talk about, and these things cause them to not have clear, calm presence. And you talk about the issue of how to feel clearer, how to be calmer, and how to have more control. How did you get into doing this outstanding work?
Well, it started off as I was very, very sensitive as a child, extremely sensitive. And in my family of origin, in my biological family, I would look at my family and wonder, why am I here? What is this all about? Because I just couldn't understand what was going on. I felt like an alien, really, so to speak. And just being the youngest child of four, I would hurt. I would hurt. My heart would hurt. And it wasn't until I got much older and then I realized that that pain that I felt was suffering. It was a lot of suffering in my family and in my community. And so getting into nursing was kind of it happened. And being a nurse allowed me to see how much suffering that we humans really do have. In the medical field, I realized that people were not healing. They were not. They were really just medicating, and that was it. Just medication was really the only thing. No one was talking about anything beyond that. And then I start to realize that our emotions, how we feel, is crucial to how we interact with our world. And a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of concern about our well-being has come up as a result of the world we're living in right now. I'm seeing a lot of mental illness happening, and just not really understanding why. So Sacred Flow was designed so that people can begin to get in touch with the body, because the body holds memory. All our cells remember everything that's happened, everything we've stuffed, every emotion that we've ever had. And Sacred Flow will help us begin to unravel some of those emotions so we can begin to get clear, so our nervous system can calm down, so we're not in fight or flight. So our cortisol levels can reduce and we can begin to be healthy, whatever healthy looks like, or normal, because I don't know if there is such a thing as normal really in this world. I don't know if we can be normal and exist in a crazy world.
The idea of ease in a context of dis-ease, I love it, right? Because that's where the word dis-ease comes from. Sacred flow helps release built up tension, restore grounding, and invite peace back into the body. You said that your childhood experiences had you feeling alienated and estranged from the people that you were around every single day. That's challenging. That speaks to some level of psychological and some other types of trauma that you encounter. So you know this firsthand, that this is real. This is a real issue. And you know that you engage in practices that seem to bring you back, center you. I love it. There is, you mentioned this idea of the body and the body keeping score account. There's a book entitled "The Body Keeps Score," right? That things are entered into every cell of the body. And there's a research study that was done by two scientists, Diaz and Resler, in mice. I think is so profound. And in this particular study, they found that these mice that would have this smell of cherry blossom, and then they would be shocked, electrocuted. And so they knew that every time the cherry blossom smell was coming, that they would be shocked.
Right.
And so they anticipated the shock, that a visceral response. These mice had pups that were not shocked, but they would get the smell of the cherry blossom, and their bodies would have a visceral response to the cherry blossom smell, though they had never been shocked. Those pups had pups that grew up and had the same experience of smelling the cherry blossoms, and they would also have a visceral response. That it was the trauma was generational because it never been addressed. And so I was talking about this one day in a meeting, and people talking about grants and getting funds. And so this guy says, "Well, I'm Resler of that study." So Resler was in this room, and he says, "We also found this. We also found that we can provide ways of addressing the trauma response, have another response altogether, and that becomes passed down generationally as well." So we know that trauma response and trauma healing, we can suggest that can occur through the DNA, through our system. So what you're talking about doing is correcting a system that had adjusted to trauma. So this is some transgenerational trauma healing that you're talking about doing. Talk to us about that.
Exactly. So with the theta healing, that's the other modality that I use. There are 4 levels of it. So we're talking about limiting belief systems that we have, some core beliefs that we attained while we were here in this lifetime. We have genetic, which is passed down through DNA. And then we have our history level, which also is from collective memory. But then when we get to that soul level healing, where our soul really does know what we need. But really, for most of us, that trauma of even slavery or enslavement, that has been heavy for us as a people, other peoples as well. But that trauma that's in our cell, in our DNA, that's why we're talking about all this anger that we're experiencing, a lot of anger. And yes, we can work on those subconscious beliefs that we carry, because most of those things that we're feeling are coming from our subconscious. The conscious mind we're aware of, but it's those in our subconscious that we have pushed down so deeply that oftentimes we don't even know we're reacting to subconscious beliefs. So the theta healing, which is a trauma modality, helps with bringing those to awareness and then help moving them out of the body, the pain body.
So what is theta healing, right? So you said what it does, right? It brings it up to the level of awareness. You talk about limited beliefs, genetics, and history, and also soul level. But what is theta healing? What is that?
Theta healing was developed like in 1990 by a woman that had cancer. She had a spontaneous healing, but what she discovered is that the beliefs that we hold is what determines our reality. So what we see in our world is determined by what's in our minds. And so what she did was she goes up to the seventh plane of dimensions, and she works with what they call the creative all there is, whoever created all of this. And you work on removing those and pulling them out of the subconscious. But first, you do have to bring them to awareness, because when we bring them to awareness, then transformation happens. There may be all kind of reactions as we bring them to awareness, but bringing them to awareness is crucial. So we witness the healing happening. Then something transformational happens. People begin to heal. Now, how it happens, that's not my deal. That's not on me. But that's between the person, because really, I'm not a healer. That's people. That's your soul. Because I really don't have anything to do with that. I'm just a guide. That's all I'm here to do. So I realized, taking it back, that what I've gone through personally is enabling me to help people and walk people through this process, be it through theta healing, be it through sacred flow, be it through being a medical intuitive, however, whatever people need, because people really do know what they need when you show them the way. We really do know, but we have to get some direction. And most of us don't have any guidance. We don't have any mentors. We don't have anybody helping us along the way. We're just kind of floundering in this world, kind of lost, most of us.
I do agree that we have the answer. I do agree that we know. I say that people have come out of a womb where fingers and eyes and ears formed and things formed, the spinal system, all of this formed on time, and contractions, and people, left the womb on time. So there was a knowing, and that same knowing is with us every single day. I concur. I also agree with you when you suggest that for a population that has had the trauma of enslavement, that trauma still lives because it's not been checked. And so many of the responses that we have in life are associated with that. That is a center of the work that I do in Ubuntu psychotherapy. That I say that we cannot have post anything. We can't have post traumatic when it's ongoing. It's persistent enslavement, systemic trauma. It's an ongoing thing that has to be perpetually checked. And you give us some tools as to how to check that. And I like the energy alignment and balance and conversation that you have about to restore the natural flow and vitality, because the energy can be usurped by our negative affect, by our belief systems, by the words that we utter. And I will say this: when I watched one day this person interact with this infant, it was an infant, small, probably, I know it was less than 10 months old, right?
Yeah.
10 months old. And so they were giving it all kind of accolades. Look at baby, all the baby talk. The fingers, little hands, da 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 da. And then they said, look at his forehead like his daddy.
Wow.
At that point, the child's countenance changed. The little infant's, like, you don't know the words that were said, but there was energy in the words.
Yes.
And so they felt that. And I'm submitting to you that the body, the cells have to operate the same way, that there is energy emitted from our thoughts, our beliefs, that informs the body. And so when we shift that, it seems like what you're telling us, when you shift that, it shifts outcomes in life. So
that's true. That is so true. Because for some reason, we have been told that we're victims, that we have no power, no control over what happens to us in our life. And that is so untrue. We're much more powerful than we have even begun to realize as a people, as individuals. But when we give our power away, then yes, we do become powerless. And that becomes an issue, because we do it every day, all the time. The words we say to ourselves disempower us. The people that are around, the words, the names that we call each other, those derogatory terminology, some of the words that we use daily. I had a conversation with one of the ladies at work one day, and she was saying, I heard you talking to your friend and you all are so positive. My friends, we don't talk like that. We call each other B words and we say F words, and, we're dropping all kind of negative connotations upon one another. And we do it in a playful manner, but it's not playful because there's the energy behind those words. Just like that baby is affected by that energy behind that baby didn't understand what they were saying, but it was energy behind those words that affected that baby. And just like the music we listen to, that vibration of that music, it's affecting us also. We may not be aware of that, but we're being impacted by the music. High or low energy, we're being impacted.
It's important to recognize that, right? There was this research study done with with the water and the vibration and crystallization and how it crystallized. Very
Mhm.
very powerful bit of a research there that people can look into. And I'll we'll come up with the name. But I wanted to I wanted to go back, right? Because there is an internalization that we have as a population of negative isms, right? And we don't recognize how that influences things. And so we are used to using the NBH is what I said, right? We use that on a daily basis and not understand that it's not a term of endearment because it comes from a place of pain. And
Mhm.
so that actually reaffirms the pain and the suffering and the trauma more so than it does the healing. Now, there's a way to recapture terms and concepts and then to change them into something else. But if I have some feces and I give you the feces in a bag that has a bow on it, I still have given you just feces. And so I submit that the constructs are still fecal matter. And
That's
so we
right.
have to be able to challenge those things. And so let's go into this, right? So you mentioned sacred flow and you mentioned breath. How do we implement this? What do we need to do first to deal with the either the medical intuitive insight, the energy alignment, the trauma release modalities? What do we need to do? What is sacred flow, and how do I begin to stop this foolishness that I have going on in my life?
Well, first, we have to become aware. We have to become
Okay.
conscious. That's the first thing. We have to bring it to consciousness. We have to realize that what we're doing is not healthy. It's not helping us at all. And it's really more destructive than anything. That's the first thing. Because if we don't even know that it's negative, then we'll continue to do it. Um, so, if first, awareness, bringing it to consciousness, that's number one. And then we do have to realize or start thinking of how can I change my life? Or do I want to change my life? That's second. Because the minute we shift that, all kinds of remarkable things start to happen. People start coming into our life. Songs start changing on the radio. I mean, it just starts to phenomenally happen. Um, we start getting more positive feedback as we put out more positive energy.
Dana,
Um,
that's just coincidence. That doesn't really
Oh,
happen.
that's
That's
what
coincidental.
you say. That's what you say. But it's no such animal as a coincidence. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's the truth of the matter. There's no such a thing as a coincidence. Everything is very purposeful in the universe. The way things line up is very purposeful. And again, we don't realize our power. We don't realize that. We think that it's something outside of us. Not true. Not true.
Mm. So I cut you off. Awareness, thinking, having a willingness to change. I thought, what next?
Okay, so what happens is when we change our thoughts, our frequency begins to change. What does that even mean? The way we vibrate starts to change. Even when you walk in a room and you're trying to decide who I want to talk to, say you go to a party and you scan the room. You may not know what you're doing, but you're scanning energy. You're reading information from that room and you're making a decision, who do I want to speak to today? That's all frequency. So when we change our thoughts, we change our frequency. Say, for example, shame. Shame is very low on the frequency vibration. Anger is much higher. Then we can move from the anger, because anger is it's a very forceful kind of a emotion, to get to courage so we can begin to change. But our frequency is what we put out into the universe. That's what we connect. That's how we connect with that universal vibration. That's important. So it's our frequency that changes when we start making mental changes within our own being.
Mm.
So that is key. Consciousness, bringing it to awareness, then our vibration changes, our frequency changes. We start attracting more things in alignment with that change. And I'm not saying that we won't go back, because our thoughts are, we get a lot, we've been bombarded by thought, different vibrations all the time. you're talking about the music, you're talking about TikTok, you're talking about Instagram. So we're getting all kind of vibrational frequencies coming at us constantly, and we're having to fight off, okay, so where am I going to give my attention to that or to this? And when we give our attention to something that's positive, we'll get more positive. But when we give our attention to negativity, oh, it's everywhere. It's consuming us daily.
I like that when you said to what do we attend, right? Attention. What do we pay attention to? That's on point, right? Because what we attend to begins to become predominant in our lives. Now, this sounds pretty spooky. This sounds like
It
it's
sounds
almost,
woo woo, doesn't it? It
yeah,
sounds
it's like
woo woo.
all this. The frequencies are going to change when they change, right? However, uh, you have evidence that this works, folks. You need to check out. Sister Dana Gant at radianthealingbydana.com, radianthealingbydana.com. And this is where she talks about where medicine meets intuition. And she is a person who not only is talking it, but she is walking it. She's talking about the issue of how to tap into your I want to say the unactualized potential, because we often get stuck into a zone of negativity. It reminds me of a research study that was done with the flea that could jump 6 feet high and put into a jar with a lid that's 6 inches high, and that flea jumps and only hits that lid 6 inches high, and then it has offsprings that only jump 6 inches high. And you take the lid off of that jar, and no flea will jump out of the jar because it has been conditioned to believe that it can't do anything else.
That's right.
But do that. And that's what you seem to be describing here, right? This idea of that. And another research study that was done, learned when I was in grad school about the learned helplessness, and they had this dog on the grid, and they would shock the dog, and the dog would just simply whimper and whine because it couldn't get out of the particular cage where it was shocked. And then they cut the dog open, found out, ulcers were all inside the dog. It had all kind of problems. They then expanded the research and said, let's just do it this way. Let's have a dog that's trained to, every time the shock comes, to jump over the barrier, along with a dog that has learned helplessness, that believes that it can't not escape, and watch what happens. And so people were convinced, of course, that the dog would see the other dog jump over the barrier and get out. But the dog that had been conditioned that it could not get out, even after seeing another dog jump over the barrier, when it was shocked, it just simply would sit there and whimper because it did not believe that it had the capacity to change itself. And I can see the same thing happening here, that people can hear this information and not believe that it's even possible to change. So how do you address that? What do you do in that situation? Talk to me.
Well, the fact of the matter is, you're right. Back to being woo-woo. When we don't understand something, so what do? We discount it. Like you said, it could be a coincidence. It's just happened. It's almost unbelievable to believe that we can change. If our mother was a prostitute, then chances are I will turn out to be a prostitute. I don't think I can go to school and do anything better. That's just the way it is. That's my life. Until somebody gives us hope that it is possible to change. I mean, I had a baby at 16 years old. I don't think I ever would have been here if I didn't have that. Someone told me, "Oh, you're smart. You should go to school." I didn't know that. So I'm saying that to say that there's always a possibility to change. Always. Yeah, you can choose to stay where you are, but then again, you can make a decision and make a choice. And that's the beauty in being human, that we always can make a different decision or different choice. Yeah, that's the point. that's
Right. Because life is determined by the chances that we take and the choices that we make. And so you're saying that you can believe me or not, but the reality is that from lived experience that sacred flow is real. You know that people have to get themselves to a point of awareness that there is an issue, and I think people know it, and then be willing to change so that they can have a different trajectory in life. And if you want some change, you have to think about that. You talked about the issue of genetics and cultural trauma and so forth. Right. This is important. As a nurse, in this last minute or two that we have together, as a nurse, like what did you see that told you that this This is real. I know. I think about psychoneuroimmunology all the time. What you're
Right,
describing,
right, right,
right?
right.
The idea of how the mind can influence the neurological system of the body. But where did you see that actually influence change here for you?
Well, that's very important and a good question because I begin to realize how the body speaks to us and that we don't understand the language. It's the same with dreams. We have dreams and we don't understand what they mean. But something like as simple as a shoulder pain, how that can contribute or be associated with carrying responsibility, heavy responsibility that we carry, or low back pain, or feeling financial distress, or feeling like I'm not being supported. So I started to see the correlation between the physical body and the pains that we were having in particular areas of the body. And then I began to see the correlation between the two, the emotions and the pain in the body. Um, and then that's how I got into medical intuitive reading because as a nurse, it's very biological. But in that, there's an art to it and a science. The art is perception, and the science is the biology of the emotions and the energy behind that. And that has been fascinating to see that correlation of helping people to understand what's happening with their body and to name it and to say, this may be a part of what's happening with you. That yeah, you can go take a medication that will numb the pain, but it's not going to take away the pain because that pain is coming from your emotional body. Totally different. So whereas medicine say what's wrong, medical intuitive will say, why is the body speaking in this particular way? There's a difference in the language. So what's wrong? Yeah, I can give you a pill for that. No problem. But then with that pill, you're going to have other symptoms that you're going to be dealing with then. So, but medical intuitive will give you the why and give you an understanding as to what's happening with you on an emotional level.
Thank you so much. That's one of the services that you provide. I had to mute myself because I was commenting every time you were saying something.
Yeah.
But that's part of work you do with the medical intuitive consultation, the
Yes.
theta healing work that you do, sacred flow.
Mhm.
People can actually find you at Radiant Healing by Dana.com and seek you out for some of these services. Communicate with you about this. This is powerful.
Mm.
The work that you're doing is phenomenal. I commend you for it. I commend you for being able to take your own situation, your own narrative, and transform it into a purpose to facilitate the health and healing of other people.
I
This is
think
Profound Conversations. We're here with Dana Gant. She's told us about things that we need to do. In closing, what do you need to tell us to do differently? That what can you inform us about that we can begin to live better, do better, and be better?
think differently. Think
Mm.
differently from where we are now, as opposed to focusing outward. Let's turn that inward because we have so many distractions pulling at us daily. So to turn that around, we need to focus more on ourselves and what's happening with us, and then make some decisions about how we want to change our lives.
Mm. Okay, there it is. Think better, live better, and then have different outcomes in your life. This is a moment where we understand that there's something happening on the inside,
Mm.
and that something can be influenced by the something that continues to happen on the inside. So if we have stinking thinking, then we have the particular
Right.
process of a life that is out of alignment. But if we can begin to move and think differently, and recognize the power that we have within. This is what she was telling us. And the power within, then we can ascend to our highest possibilities. And we
Mm.
must believe in the truth of who we are because we came here knowing, and we always know. Just experiences help us to not be able to connect with that knowing. Just like the sun is always shining, clouds may block us from
Mm.
seeing the clouds. Our experiences may block us. We may turn away from the sun, and we may turn back towards the sun. That's our choice in this life. So we can turn back towards the sun. In this case, the sun is our power, and
Yes.
she will help us to do that. And I thank you for helping me today to think differently, so I can be differently, so I can change the vibrations in my body. This is Profound Conversations. She is Dana Gant. She's talking about radiating with the power that is within, radiant healing. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining our profound conversation. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe to our podcast and then gift this information to a friend or family member using the share button. You can find our show on all social media platforms as well as on our website at profoundconvos.com.